sort of we are mutating with technology. Such a cliche, the Italian man with the Finnish woman, I realized. In an ideal situation, the studio would be a place where you are showing the work to yourself.
So, hello.
Hello.
Today's visit is in the studio of Roberto Fusco, who is an artist who comes from Italy originally.
Indeed.
And what else?
From Rome specifically, and I came here 13 years ago, or even a little bit longer than that. And I came here without like a major plan. Things just sort of happened like they do in life. But yeah, if I can sort of back it up a little bit, basically my at least like stories that well, I actually studied in Rome, although like I was a bit traveling for doing my master thesis in one place in Netherlands, and Erasmus I was in Norway, so I got a bit fascinated by the north of Europe. And but what I studied was actually not art, but I studied electronic engineering in Rome, which is like a 5 years program, like what it's here, like a Master of Science in Electronic Engineering. And at that point I had very little sort of interest and in doing arts. I was of course exposed to arts like many people do, but I don't come from like a family of artists. Like my mom used to be like a teacher of maths and physics, and my dad used to study physics, and so very scientific minds basically.
Very high chance for you to become an engineer.
Exactly. Yeah. What I really wanted at that point, when I was like 18, I had to choose like the university degree I wanted to pursue. I was more interested actually in math. Like that was something that I got from my mom. I really sort of enjoyed that. And I think now I get a bit of an understanding of why I was into math. But I don't know, people gently pushed me towards this, do engineering, you'll do fine, you'll get a job, and so forth. So yeah. That was the time. Was also like early 2000s, so was this bit ICT booms, telecommunication, IT. I mean, it seemed that it was the jobs, there would have been a lot of jobs after that, and I think that was the main concern, at least for my parents, and I wasn't really interested in anything specific. But what happened was that during the university times, I got very much into electronic music. So even before doing arts of any kind or media arts like now, I was very interested in electronic music, and I started, with my friend just making beats like many people do. And I think that was the first exposure I had, the first time I was exposed to using digital technology to do something creative. So we made a few albums, we played together, but everything stayed within the realm of electronic music and just experimental things, but sound domain. I got more open to this idea of combining different media, so not just sound, and I was very impressed by the first audiovisual performances I saw, things like, the first Albanoto or Ikeda, and these kinds of those artists that were working really together, audio and visual. So that's when I started getting interested also in programming, coding, and find ways of somehow augmenting or pairing sound composition also with visual composition. And I think from that onwards, I got much more involved in the arts, and then I decided to quit my job in Rome, which I didn't like at all, and I went to Dublin to do this Master in Music and Media Technologies, which was much more creative, much more sort of art inclined. And there is where I studied the first, programming languages, node-based programming, electroacoustic compositions, a bit of psychoacoustics as well. So it was also very much about the sound. These 2 years finished also with, like, I can say, the first group exhibition I was part of. So that was very nice. After that, I met somebody there in Dublin, and then it happened to be a Finnish woman, so I decided, okay, why not moving to Finland? It's not too bad, probably.
That's one of the two main reasons people move to Finland.
Yes, probably the most common. It's such a cliche, the Italian man with the Finnish woman. I realized there's such a common story.
Is it?
Yeah, it's really not
Italian
special.
men and Finnish women.
Woman. Yes,
Oh,
it's really not a special story.
Okay.
I thought I mean, on an individual level it is, but statistically, really not really the center of the Gaussian curve. It's really, really standard. So I moved here, and I didn't have much contact, but I knew somebody in TAIC, so in Media Lab, and but then eventually ended up getting a research contract. Sorry, this is very long. That I'm talking a bit too long about my background. But
no,
it's
fine,
okay.
it's
okay.
fine.
So I got like a research assistant position in Aalto. There was this interesting project about interactive storytelling. It was quite like a pleasant job, and then it became actually my doctoral degree. Basically, what I was interested in, and it was, I would say, a little bit, very much about human-computer interaction. So not very much art, but much more about developing some interactive gadgets. But of course, at the same time, I was also like working with sound and visual, doing a bit of live performances. And I think the first time maybe was in 2012. I had the chance to do this residency in Bergen for 3 months, and there I made what I would consider a bit like my first piece, like a video piece. It was 2-channel projection with this interactive floor that will create the sound of different material coming from different landscapes where I've been during the year, and that was in Mu Gallery. That's when I can say a little bit where the sort of artistic career started, or anyway it was more shown to the public, like in a gallery, and like that. And now that happened 10 years ago, and in the meantime I kept on like doing the similar things and different things, and I worked as freelance, and then I was teaching a bit in Aalto, in Media Lab, and now I'm working in Kuvataide Academia, in this small unit which is called Art and Technology. I work together with this artist and lecturer Tuomo Rainio, and now we also have like a art and technology lab, so a sort of fab lab where we also do digital fabrication. So that's a bit the story.
That's your CV in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's a bit the CV in a nutshell. Exactly.
So do you have a special process how you start doing some project or work?
I would say it's maybe there are two kind of work that I do, like pieces that I've done just by myself, and then I would say in the last 5-6 years I've been very much collaborating. I would say when I work with other people, the process is very based on sort of dialogue, offering maybe the initial idea, and then let the other person work with the idea itself, and try to be open and not to be too defensive about your initial idea, but just let it brew. And then the pieces that I do by myself, I think it comes from some ideas just happens. They just appear in the sort of landscape of what you would like to do, that you get excited about it. Like I would say, for instance, in the last years, I'm very, very interested. Of course, I work with technology, but specifically now I'm interested in technology and computation. So the ability that we have to make, calculation and millions of calculation using hardware and software and programming. How we can use computation, how computation is used to actually simulate and interpret phenomena, physical phenomena that are around us. It can be meteorological, it can be, like nuclear warfare, it can be whatever, it can be, computation in social media. But I'm interested in this aspect that by simulating and modeling reality, we are actually reducing it, we are transforming like reality, and how this impacts our perception of the reality itself. Now I wanted to focus on this idea of using data, historical data, so data from the past, to simulate a phenomena that I didn't witness myself, but somehow I can use computation to tell a story that has already passed, and it's the story of storms in the Baltic Sea. So that's the piece I'm working now. So I'm using all this data that are collected by a buoy that it's in the Baltic Sea. They provide, every second or every minute characteristic about the waves, and researchers use that to predict the state of the sea and also forecast the state of the sea. And
how much is that accurate, these kinds of simulations?
That's also a very interesting thing to understand a bit the history of this modeling, because in a way the math or the science behind it has been available for quite some time. But of course they are very strong approximation because the phenomena is so complex. That's why it's, it's so beautiful, it's so overwhelming in all its complexity. You can see a storm as a whole, you can see a wave as a whole, and then you can zoom in and see almost go at the level of the particles. And of course there is no way that you would be able to somehow simulate accurately that, or at least we are not there yet. But in the recent years, because they have much more powerful machine, they are able to somehow reduce the phenomena less and less.
What's your take on the simulation theory of reality?
Yeah, I'm quite agnostic towards that, in the sense that there is no way for us to figure that out. But I think what interests me in that is the fact that, like, the theories that I think are popular now about the fact that in a way our mind is basically moment by moment it constructs a model of reality, and then the new sensory input that it receives might or not match with this model of reality. So I think this aspect, if that is the simulation we are talking about, I think it sort of makes sense to me. I think we are constructing very much with our mind what's around us, and try to see how different, all the time, is what we perceive from what we expect to happen. I think this is a sort of understanding, scientific understanding, that makes sense to me.
I think that they're meaning more almost like
a matrix.
Like the Matrix.
Okay, yeah, that science fiction wise, it's kind of entertaining, but I don't know, there's maybe not so much that I can engage with that kind of thought. We know still very, very little, I would say, of what's really going on. Just across species, I mean, the understanding of the world is probably completely different, and we will never know what is to be, another living organism. So I think.
Do you think with such simulations that we can kind of get a good understanding one day,
I would say I don't think so, because we are missing so much. Like now, I don't think why computation is interesting to me. It's also to basically understand or work with what's not computable, in a way, like what is left. Because definitely I don't believe that we are just like this sort of computer program running all the time. I think there is way more that's going on that we cannot maybe verbalize, that cannot be reduced to just some sort of software running. First of all, we will need a body for that, I would say. If we want to really simulate, we will need flashes, we will need a metabolism running, we would need a lot of things. So maybe in the end we'll just make another person, and then then we just made another person. So it wouldn't, in a way, the simulation would actually be like some sort of clone of ourselves, like another human being
instead of the Matrix.
Exactly. I think the question now is like, what is the difference maybe between like a scientist or a researcher working with data, and what would be the role of the artist using this data. I think I'm interested in the knowledge that like working with this data artistically bring forth, but it's definitely a non-scientific knowledge. It's actually a way for me to share what is the subjective interpretation I have of this data through the work that I'm doing, rather than try to find a universality to
because
that.
if you only want to, then it will become data visualization if you follow it completely strictly.
Precisely. So I think you put yourself and you share like an intention in what kind of how that data becomes like a sort of material in a way, so that how you let it articulate itself, what it does, what emerges from that bit like clay in a way.
So you said that currently you're working on something that is connected to the waves in the Baltic Sea, the storm?
Yes, the storm. So it's the piece is part of, it's actually a collaboration with my friend Emma Felt, and we are making, it's a group exhibition, and we are doing like creating this installation or this space inside the group exhibition. So there are different elements, so there is a system going on also there. This specific event that happened in the Baltic Sea, these two storms, one called Rafael, the other one was called Toini, in 2004 and 2017, I believe. I basically just created a computer program that using this data will simulate and visualize these waves. I try to really see, okay, what does this number stands for, like how it reflects on the shape of this wave. Is this storm gonna look are the waves gonna be very messy, very high, very regular? I don't have a picture of that event, but somehow I would almost put myself back in time and take a picture, a snapshot of that. I think that was the gesture I was after. But anyway, these images of the storm will be then presented as large laser engravings on paper on two walls. There's going to be like a small kinetic light element in the center of the room, like a small lighthouse that I built. The light beam will illuminate the paper so that you will see glances of this storm that are still, but in a way with the light moving, hopefully they acquire this sense of liveliness, of course. And
so there won't be any video?
There won't be any video, yeah, exactly. So initially, of course, I also worked, like the simulation allows me to, I can see a video when I work with that, and that also, it's a bit of an accident in the sense that once I knew about the space and the fact that it's a group exhibition, so you need to negotiate space, sound,
How many
illumination.
People is it?
9.
9. Oh.
Yeah, so it's a lot. As you know, the space it's going to be quite packed. Some are a bit small, some are like on a screen, some are like sort of mixed media work.
Space and time?
Yeah, of course. It's in Galleria H in Suomenlinna. It opens the 5th of July. So.
And how long is it gonna be?
Until the end of the month, end of July. So it's
okay.
for that month. Yeah. So the whole exhibition, we titled Sweet Water, Rough Water. So all the pieces, somehow they are different interpretation or personal encounters, like with water and the sea, and they are articulated through different like art forms.
Is it hard to find the right people to work with, or have you worked with other people and then it was like just not going?
Yes, of course. I'm not gonna say which people.
No, I'm not gonna ask you.
No.
Fine.
No, I think it's incredibly difficult to find people you can work with like sustainably, because I don't think you can just meet somebody and in a very tactical way just make a piece. You open the book, make the thing together, you close the book, job done. I think the best pieces, they are the one that came because there is a mutual interest, there is a relationship that maybe starts from before. I think you need to dig a little bit, quite deep, to make a good work. And also you need to have a bit similar artistic intentions. Like you need to, your energies need to be aligned, I think, in quite much in order to do good work and also have a pleasant experience of working together. So that,
I'm sure that reflects afterwards in the work.
Yes.
If it wasn't pleasant.
Absolutely. There are certain like installation that I did by myself, and nowadays I wouldn't even try to do those by myself. Like I would really like to do it together with a partner or a group of people, because I feel that in order to realize that at the level, at the scale, at the depth I would like, I think I would need people around me to do it, especially like for media installation that have a lot of components and things like that.
Yeah, there was this slogan I remember from somewhere, I don't know where from, but like, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Yeah. That's. I think it's not by chance that a lot of good works is also done by like studios. I think the idea of the studio is really nice because it will allow for bigger projects and also planning maybe more in advance your works.
Do you have certain themes in your work that you could pinpoint?
I think now there are these two forces or two things going on, like trying to explore complexity of phenomena by simulation with computation, and then showing them together with or paired with some like material elements. So using, for instance, some hardware, for instance, like in this exhibition, building this small lighthouse, using like papers, like what Emma is doing, like building this like sculpture made of paper, engraving the paper. So exploring the complexity that comes out when you mix digital processes and analog processes together. I think that's one of the recurring themes that has been in the last years. And for instance, in pieces like the one we had in Manta Art Festival like 2 years ago, we worked with this robotic arm, industrial robotic arm, and the idea was to create a choreography for this robotic arm which is extremely exact, like it repeats itself really with a lot of precision. So using that very repeatable process, very sort of scripted, to activate a process that is very messy. So what this robotic arm was doing was actually shaking this box full of sand. The sound that this operation was doing was used like to create the soundscape for the exhibition, and also the visual were created started by this camera which was mounted on the robotic arm, so that it could see from very close what was inside this box. So in a way it was almost comparing this process that is very chance-based, it's full of accidents, but activated by something that is very, very exact. The theme there was very much how we make sense of events and phenomena that appears very accidental, very chance-based. And now as human, we manage to make sense of those. In another piece, for instance, I have this, which is called Ossa. It was in Lux, Helsinki 2 years ago. There are 2 tables with animal bones put on top, electronically controlled like rails, like sort of dolly, almost like a small dolly camera, because on top they have like also a camera and a light, and they are just going back and forth. There are projections where you actually see what this camera sees. There is the material. Another big element of the piece is that there is a sensor that actually, when you enter inside the installation, capture like a silhouette of yourself, and then you see yourself as made of all these bones that you have seen on the tables, the very same bones. So it's a piece to sort of create this moment of closeness between you, visitor of the installation, and this inanimate objects. I don't think there is anything that it's in a way purely digital. Things cannot stay completely digital if we want to be able to experience them. So the more you actually involve all this process and inclusion of materials and matters, the more they get transformed by those.
What's your take on AI now and the use of it? And have you tried it in some work? Or?
Yeah, I did last year. we had this piece in anti festival in Kuopio. This project is about, and is still running. It's based on workshop with 60 years old plus groups, and it's about envisioning the future of your city like in 100 years, so when you are most likely not going to be there, not just by sort of answering questionnaires or stuff like that, but doing every week embodied practices that are about, sound walk, listening, drawing the sound of the city. And we asked questions about, how will Kuopio sound like in 100 years? What kind of words are you gonna hear? What places will still exist and what will disappear? What's gonna be like what kind of political form of government there would be? And then what I did, I collected all these interviews and used it as a data set to actually train, at that point was GPT-3. And I gave like a voice to it, this like AI generated voice, a voice of a kid. And so I started editing the parts and tried to create this very speculative dialogue between them and this kid. And then you would go to different places in Kuopio with this, I built some pirate radios, which I put in different places. You would go with your FM radio, and when you're close enough, you start hearing this sort of dialogue.
It is a song, and it is beautiful. It is empty, but for the remnants of those who once lived here. It was humans who wanted more and more and more, until everything collapsed under our weight.
I was very curious. Am I gonna get something that it's a bit like just a mashup of everything that gets said? Am I gonna hear something surprising? Am I gonna hear just only what is in common among all those people? So that was maybe one of the research questions I was very interested when I was doing that. I wanted to really understand by using it what this technology can do.
And what did it do?
It was a little bit repetitive. Also because you need to consider that that's a large, not as large as ChatGPT, but large model. So the data set that you give is actually very small. It's very hard to actually produce a very, very big.
How many interviews did you have?
We had 10 interviews, 2 hours long. So it's quite much from our work in a way, it's a lot of text, but still it's not a massive amount of text.
Too many different
opinions. Exactly. So what I did is that although some answers were making sense and maybe by chance some combination of answers were actually interesting, I decided to spice it up a little bit. So I wanted to search for a little bit an alternative to this utopia versus dystopia kind of dichotomy, and I found this genre of literature which is called solar punk, which is this idea that as humans we made it, like somehow, like we exist in the future. We found a way. So now it's a matter of what kind of civilization we want to build now that we have made it. And the book in particular that I used is called A Psalm for the Wild Built by this Becky Chalmers. And it's a very cute story. It's a very nice book. I recommend it to your audience. And it's basically, there is this priest of a religion that it's not a religion that we know. In the future, it's a monk actually. It's a monk that their task is to make tea for people. So that's basically what they do in their life. Make tea for people and talk, and people are free to just come and talk about whatever they want. So I use this book because it has a lot of descriptions also on how the cities of the future or the village of the future would look like. It was intertwined nicely with what these women from the interviews were saying. So the GPT-3 was very useful assisting me in actually creating this fictional dialogue. From an artistic standpoint, I'm not very interested in what is the most popular thing nowadays, like sort of image generation with AI, like using text prompt to like create images. It's just something that I think it's a fun way to spend 10 minutes. I would like to see art that it's uses and it's at the same time critical about, as a critical sort of perspective towards the impact that AI technology might have in our life. Sort of we are mutating with technology, like, and we don't, I mean, I'm not even talking about, you know, prosthetics or stuff like that. I think, you know, with like communication technology, like internet and then social media and now AI, I think we are just part of this massive experiment that somehow we didn't sign for, and it's really changing also, you know, way we think and what's important, how we pay attention to things. I'm interested in AI from this perspective, so not strictly from artistic like purpose. I think I'm concerned about a technology that supports attention economy. I think that's so that somehow steers our attention. So it's not neutral because it's built just to somehow manipulate our attention constantly. I'm very curious to see what happens in the future, like a generation that somehow has started living completely immersed in that social media reality and stuff like that. Not to talk about, you know, all the political implication of deep fakes and stuff like that, which of course go hand in hand with the new abilities of ChatGPT to just produce, you know, text that sometimes is very hard to recognize that it's actually not human-made. And of course, at the very end, it is actually human-made in the sense that the data set comes from human themselves. It's like the meaning that it's there is a meaning that it's already in the data that we have been giving. I would like to see art that somehow has also a reflection on that.
Let's get back to the studio, because
Studio.
this is, you know, big part of why this podcast is happening.
Yep.
To find out how artists are working,
Yes.
where, and
Yes.
yeah, your studio is very cozy and big in the same time.
Yeah, it's a nice studio, I must say. Yes. Or we moved here. When was it? Maybe 3 years ago or something like that, with Andrea Mancianti. It's roughly, this room is 50 square meters. It is now shared with Andrea and with Robin Ellis. It's a bit of a mix of practices in the sense that Robin brings in this fixed media, traditional printmaking, but a bit spiced up with the drawing machines. Andrea brings here also this musicianship and sound making practice. There is also a sound setup here that's very handy, and one part of the studio is mainly dedicated for playing, so it's left a little bit more empty, and I have like a little desk over there and share with Andrea when we do rehearsal this part of the studio. And the idea is that we have a projector over there so that we can a bit see how like an audiovisual performance would look like. So we are actually here, project, we have a screen so that we can see ourselves what's going on, but we can also have the image like large. And I think that's probably one of the most important thing that for me to have in the studio, like the possibility at times, especially when you work, you know, with the digital images that then you want to present as a projection, have the possibility at times to actually test it. In an ideal situation, the studio would be a place where you are showing the work to yourself.
Yeah, it's good that you are just answering my questions without I even asking.
Okay. No, but this you asked about the studio.
Yeah.
Okay,
I have like other questions about the studio,
but it was all right.
You just went through them.
Okay,
like
good. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, anyway.
I would say that places where I go to openings, because like I tend to find work that I like. Of course, art galleries like sculptor. The work that I find there, it's often not very, very close to what I do. So I think it's quite inspiring because it brings new idea on how to, work with physical forms. So it's I feel that I can get a lot out of it, like often, because that's maybe not exactly what I'm doing. More in Capeli is another place where if I have the chance to go to an opening, I go. And then the new space in Huto. It's quite nice it's very nice actually in Teorastamo.
Do you have certain artists that you are kind of inspired by or follow their work?
Yeah, this Japanese artist Ryoshi Kurokawa. In the way he manages to create really sort of audiovisual entities, like with projection, usually it's something like that. I've never experienced anything like that. Like it's really like a special audiovisual poem that I think it's unmatched by anybody else. Maybe more in the media arts, an artist that I really like, but of course it's well known, is this Lozano Hammer, a South American artist, and he's a media artist working with technology, and I like because his pieces can be also very poetic, but they also have this element of exposing a bit of critique towards the technology that actually he uses. Jenna Sutela, who also I like very much.
She has a work in the Biennale as well.
Yeah, exactly. This sort of bowl with the water inside. Yeah, exactly. That's she does very fascinating work. Very like that is sort of speculative interspecies or imaginary species and imaginary languages, and so that was very good. And then of course another artist I really like, and also I'm working with him nowadays, so I also know more about what he's doing. It's Teemu Lehmus Ruusu, art and ecology. In this piece is working very much with, the soil. It's another thing if you actually manage to discuss, like with somebody about their intention rather than just see the work as such. Although the work can be completely, revealing all the intention that are behind, but it's just, I think, nice.
It adds when there is.
It adds, and I think it's almost that the work has done all the work that it should do. Like it also created a moment of relationship between two humans physically, which I think it's a very. I think that sharing. I think maybe that's one of the reasons why, at least I do what I do. That you want to share your intention, your subjectivity through artistic decisions, but then it also gets to the point you actually encounter other people to share, what your intention, a bit like now.
Yeah. By the way, the podcast now has a website, thevisitpodcast.com, and then there is a page with all of these recommendations from all of the guests. So I'm just feeling
nice.
Because sometimes somebody might hear the name but not.
No, of course, that's
but
really
I'm going to
great.
write everything down there.
Super.
So
I look forward to check it out then.
Yeah.
Nice.
Okay, well, this has been a great conversation. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Roberto, for this time, and
thank you, Leda.
Yeah, good luck with the exhibition that's coming.
Yes, thanks. You're all welcome to the exhibition on the 15th Suomenlinna Galleriaha.